Hello everyone, this is the last chapter of your syllabus Advanced .NET Concept, and if you are going with the .NET as your career choice, then these two concepts are pretty much important and is going to be asked several times in interview. Okay, so the topic that you can understand is Window Presentation Foundation and Window Communication Foundation, that is WPF and WCF. So WPF, it is a base building application and have a clear separation between your GUI and your business logic. Okay, so just like your window form, your WPF, it is in the same platform. It creates the application just like window form application, but it gives you the separation, clear-cut separation between your graphical user interface and your business logic. You understand your graphical user interface in web form, it is like .aspx, and your business logic, your code behind file, is in .aspx.cs. In the same way here in the WPF, the GUI has been written in .xaml, that is your extended markup language, and your business logic, it is written in .xaml.cs. Okay, it clearly separated out here in the WPF. And why do we need it? The very simplest reason is to create more animations, more themes, and more rich user interface. It comes in .NET Framework 3.0. Before that framework, we only work with window form, and I think you had done that. You have several practicals on window form. You had several chapters on window form, and it is the simplest, window application that you can create with those toolbox. Okay. Well, WPF helps user in developing a rich user interface. It gives you 2D graphics, 3D graphics, animations. It gives you rich colors. It gives you themes and styles with minimum code complexity. And what do you mean by code complexity? I mean minimum code complexity. Well, to understand that, just understand that if you are having window form application, and so if you are having window form application, that you are then precisely are using just like 2D graphics, right? It doesn't have any animation styles or any colors like that. It is the simplest control you are using. But your but externally, if you want that your window form possess some 3D graphics like animation styles, if you want that, then you need to call external APIs like DirectX, like Window Media Player, or any other DLL. DLL is Dynamic Link Library. I hope you know that. So your window form specifically needs some external animation styles or themes. Then you need to call external API or DLL. So when you are calling these external API, it will definitely increases the code or the line of code and makes the code complexity. No one gonna understand the code. It's very hard for the third person to read the code and to understand the code. And that is the reason Microsoft had evolved a newer technology so that we can create window form or like window application with more rich user interface like 2D animation, 3D animations, themes, styles, and rich colors. Okay, but with minimum code complexity. You don't need to call those external API. It is already there in the framework. You just have to call the namespace, and there you are. Okay, so that's why window the the Microsoft had developed this newer technology, that is Window Presentation Foundation. Well, this DirectX API is nothing but a collection of API for handling tasks related to multimedia. And by means of multimedia, it is specifically meant for game programming. And you had seen it, right? Whenever you download or install a game and try to run that game, somehow if it doesn't have any DirectX pre-built installed on the Windows or on the operating system, then the game is not going to run. You need that DirectX API. It is a DLL, okay, not DLL, but however it is an exe file, compact exe file. It needs it, right, to run that game. That DirectX is having collection of DLL, collections of API to handle those game. Okay, that's why I need that DirectX. And you can install that. If you don't have the DirectX on your operating system, then you can download that DirectX from this Microsoft website, and this is DirectX End User Runtime Web Installer. You can download it from here. Okay, so this is specifically for 9, 10, 11, and it is specifically meant for 11 till 11. Okay, so this is it, DirectX. I hope you understand that why the WPF has been evolved and why do we need it. Now, what this WPF looks like? Well, if you see the architecture of WPF, I haven't created it, but let me just draw it here. I'm so sorry, I'm taking this time here. I'll not take much time. So the another box here is meant for WPF managed layer, and then the box is specifically for WPF unmanaged layer, and then the box is, I mean, it is just for the user 32 and other DLL. So I can write here that here it is the window base, window presentation framework, and window presentation. This is the core. So let me just write it over here that this is window base, and let me just increase the font here. So this is going to be 16. So this is window base, this is presentation framework, then we have presentation core, and here we have milcore, milcore, and also we have window codec, and here we have it's a small gap here, we have user 32, and then we also have some GDI call, graphical device interface, and also we have device driver to run those applications. Oh, sorry, the hardware. Okay, device driver. And between this and this, we have something called as CLR. Let me just put it over here. This is common language runtime, and also we have direct 3D. Okay, which is nothing but DirectX. Okay, so this part is window WPF managed layer, and this part is WPF unmanaged layer. Okay, I hope you understand the managed and unmanaged. Managed is run by CLR, and unmanaged, which is not run by CLR. Okay, this comes in first chapter. So let me also draw some lines here, take some width, and the thing that window base is going to touch here is it directly touches, I'm so sorry, it just directly touches to the CLR. Then window codec is going to touch here to direct 3D. I'm not drawing the perfect arrow, however this is it. Okay, and then CLR is going to use this complete user 32 and GDI, so this meets here, and this WPF managed layer is going to be come back over here in the WPF unmanaged layer. Okay, so this is the complete architecture of what you can say, the complete architecture of WPF. Also this is in the same okay, same location. Also this has to be, this is CLR and this is direct 3D. I hope you are getting it. Okay, so this is WPF architecture. You can draw it if you want. So we have WPF managed layer, WPF unmanaged layer, and inside that we have different DLL to work around. So you can see to see this architecture, complete architecture, we can also use the Visual Studio to understand, but let me just give you the idea on these 3 DLL that is there in the WPF managed layer. So your presentation framework, this presentation framework, let me just write it down here, the about DLL. So we are dealing with the first WPF managed layer, so please note it down here. This is a WPF managed layer, and I'm talking about presentation framework. So this presentation framework will give you something called as window panels. It gives you style control, and it also gives you about layout. So sorry, layout. It gives you about content and so on. Okay, Basically what it gives you and so on, basically it gives you, shows the end user presentation feature. Okay, it gives you the basic raw architecture, or you can say the raw layout of your application. And next thing is we have presentation core, and presentation core will give you, it gives you, or it provides you, provides feature such as 3D, 2D. We also, it also gives you geometry and so on. Okay, and apart from that, this core, presentation core, it also gives you something called as rendering. And rendering is nothing but it changes the code. So whatever the HTML code you are writing, or whatever the ASPX code you are writing in the Visual Studio, when it compiled and executed, and when you go for view page, the complete ASPX is being rendered to HTML, a different HTML. Okay, so rendering you can understand from your web application tutorial, and I'm not going to explain you. Well, it just, when you go for like view page source, the complete HTML code that is you are seeing here, it has been rendered. Okay, it has been rendered from your source application code. Okay, so presentation core will give you 2D 3D geometry, and it also provides you the feature for rendering. Okay, so whatever the code you are writing for XAML, it is going to be converted into some other source code, not in the other language, but it hides some features, and it gives you some other control. Okay, then we have something called as window base, and window base is, it holds the basic elements, it holds the basic elements that can be reused outside the WPF environment. So it holds the basic element that we can use apart from WPF. If you want to work the same element for window form, you can use it. That is the window base. Okay, such as you can use something called as a dispatcher object. Let me put it in the double quotes. This is dispatcher object, and you can have an idea on dispatcher by looking in the topic of threading. So dispatcher will invoke call on another thread. Please look around the blogs for dispatcher object if you want to, if you are interested in the topic of dispatcher. It is a concept of threading, and it invokes the calls on another thread that you are creating in the thread application. Okay, so these are the WPF managed layer. We have framework, we have core, and we have window base, and all these three DLL is there in the WPF. And how can you see that? You start your Visual Studio, whatever the version you are having. I'm having Visual Studio 2010, so I'm working on it. So I'm going to start with new project. So I'm also giving an idea how you can create your first application with WPF. So this is WPF under Visual C#. You select Windows and you select WPF application. Right now I'm not giving any name, I'm just putting it WPF application 2. So hit OK. Also this dispatcher object is actually comes under you know that, right? System oh come on, system dot window dot thread. Okay, so this is the namespace for dispatcher object because it is the concept of root concept for threading. So you can see this is the main page of WPF, and as I told you that it gives you a clear separation of your GUI. This is your GUI and this is the code behind file. So it gives you a clear-cut separation. I'm just resizing this font, so I think you can see this. So and I think you know that we have main window.xml and main window.xml. How can the two files having the same name? I mean, they're having different extension but with the same name. How can you do that? Well, you can do that with the help of partial class. You can see We are using partial class here, which gives you the same name, okay, for two functions. For that, so that is the work for partial class, that gives you the same name for two different functionality. Okay, so we are not working on that, but we are dealing with WPF, and I was saying that I have this WPF managed layer and these three DLL: framework, core, and window base. You can find this DLL in the properties, not in the properties, actually in the references, sorry. So in the references we have, you can see this is presentation core, we also have window base, and we also have this presentation framework. And as I was saying, that presentation framework will basically gives you the presentation features. So when I click on that, and you can find system.window.control here, system.window.control, and you can find all those control here. Can you see? We have combo box, we have combo box item, content control, and so many other things. So your data grid or grid is also going to become inside the presentation framework. So you can see here this whole thing is known as grid. You can see this grid, this is the grid, or you can say this is the layout, and layout is this one. So this is the complete grid, and that grid come and exist in window presentation foundation managed layer inside presentation framework, and this is it. This is the grid, you can see. Okay, so these are the things that you can do. Other than this, we have presentation core, and presentation core is saying, you can see system.window.media for that. Excuse me. System.window.media, it gives you the text options, media animations, you can see, and media animations, as I told you, that gives you 2D and 3D geometry. It also gives you animations. So this is the thing that it gives you. You can see here stick storyboard. It also gives you a thickness animation base, and other stuff. Okay. So other than that, we have window base, and for window base, as I told you, it having dispatcher object. So you can find that dispatcher object inside a system.window.threading. So you can see here we have dispatcher object inside system.window.threading. Okay, so these are the three DLL that we had discussed in WPF managed layer. Other than that, we have WPF unmanaged layer, and we have another DLL. So let me just separate it out. WPF unmanaged layer which deals with milcore. So milcore gives you, it is a bridge, okay, just like SQL data adapter, it is a bridge between WPF managed layer and DirectX. Okay, this is the bridge between WPF managed layer and DirectX, and you can see here precisely in the paint we had seen this milcore is acting as a bridge between the WPF managed layer and this direct 3D. Okay, this is the mediator between managed layer and this whole new DirectX. Okay, this is the component. These user32 GDI device drivers are the component of DirectX, and that's why this milcore is going to be your a bridge or intermediate that communicate between managed layer and this DirectX API. Okay. And next thing is we're gonna understand the window codec. Okay, so this is window codec, and window codec is another low level API. It is another low level API for managing support, such as it actually works with video processing and image processing, video processing. It also works with image video displaying and scaling. Okay, scaling means if you are having 1080 as your base output, but if you want to see the screen in 720, then we need to scale your frames, and that's why we have scaling. Okay. And window codec you had seen many a times in your window media player, or in the MX player, or in the in the VLC player. So if you are having a .mkv file, it never runs on window media player. It says, or it prompts you with an error that I need an external codec to run this .mkv file. Okay, so then you will install some codec, and then that supports .mkv extension. Okay, you have seen many times in your real time, whenever you watch movies or something like that. So whenever there is an extension that is not supported by your media player, then I need this low level API, which is known as window codec. Okay, please do this experimentation on your window media player. It never works with .mkv file. You need an external codec to run that .mkv file. Okay, I hope you are getting it. Now the next thing is, this is done, WPF manage layer. We have small entities on DirectX. DirectX, you already know that it is a collection of API. I'll give you an idea on user 32. So user 32 manages to render the content. Just a minute. Actually, user 32, it is not renders the content. Actually, DirectX render the content. User 32 manages it manages the memory and process separation. In your OS, in your operating system chapters, or in the operating system subject, you had seen the user kernel and user system and the kernel system. In the user 32, it is a part of user system, okay, in your operating system. So it handles your memory management and the process separation or the process management. Okay, having several other things, such as it also used to do something called as event handling. It also gives you an idea on timers. It also gives you an inter-process communication. So whatever the connection between register to register, it gives you the it can be done with the help of user 32. Okay, other term that we had seen in the architecture of WPF, that is the graphical device interface. This is okay. So this is part of window form, and this topic is also being covered up in your window form chapter. So this is, it provides, let me just give you a short formulation on GDI plus. It provides expanded set of graphics and rendering quality. Okay, this is your GDI plus. Last thing is, we have CLR, that is common language runtime. Next thing is, we have device driver. I hope you are getting this. Device driver is nothing but it is specific to operating system, and it is used to apply to access any specific hardware, or you can say the peripheral device that you are connecting. I don't know, I think my spellings are wrong, but that is okay. So it is, a device driver is applied to access any specific it is a kind of, the intermediate that communicate with your operating system and your hardware. Okay, your operating system doesn't know that what kind of hardware you're using, so this device driver is going to tell you, your operating system, that the hardware is what and how it is going to be operated. Okay, it is a program. So it depends on your operating system. It is 32-bit operating system or 64-bit operating system. I hope you are getting it. Now let's get back to our Visual Studio. This is all the note that you can write it down for the exam point of view. Okay, so we get back to our Visual Studio, and we have WPF over here. So what I'm going to do over here is, I'm going to drag and drop one button control, and this button is going to be inserted in between the grid layout. You can see here. So you can see we have, in the code part, you can see we have grid as the root, and inside that we have the button control. So this black lining that you are seeing is your grid, and inside that we have this button control. And you can already see here that this button is completely different from your window form. It is having better style, better theme, and better color complexion. Okay, so I can change different things over here, just like I can change the I can change the color, just like brush. You go for brush, and then you can see here I can change the, oh, I'm so sorry, this is for form, I don't need this. Oh, it completely changed. I need this button, and now I can change the color of that. So you can see this is nice, theme. This is nice, color complexion, where I can apply this on this button. However, I'm just writing this code. I already have it, right? Actually, um, let me just run this. I'll simply write here that message box dot show, hey there, new to WPF. Okay, so this is what I'm writing, and when I run this application, you can see that it gives you a nice style of button. You can see this is completely different from your window form button. I can show you this. I also have this window form. When I run this, you can compare these two the output. So this is from window form, and this is from your WPF. The buttons are completely different, a very styled button here in the WPF, and it is good to see this. Okay, so it is having rich user interface. However, in the window form, it is doesn't have any kind of kind of capability to have those animations and those graphics. Okay, this is the basic comparison. So I'm just closing this window form, and I'm going to give you a basic a kind of I'll create one simple animation to work around WPF. uh, so what I'm gonna do over here is I'll give you the animation for fading in and fading out. So I'm going to remove this button. You can fade in, fade out for any control, but I'm specifically taking the image control. So I'll search for image, and I drag and drop here the control, and you can see that this image is again comes in the grid, in the grid section. Okay. Okay, so now I need one image here, and image you can get it from, I'm going to paste. So you're having this image control over here, and to get an image here inside this image control, what you can do is right click on this image control and go to the properties, or you can also use this shortcut F4 to have the property window. So I'll go for this source, and I click on this button, choose image, and you can have this download.png image of Visual Studio. Actually, you can hit OK. You can add it from here also. You can copy and paste it over here, so that you can directly get the image. Okay, there are many ways to do it. So this is the image, and what I'm gonna do is whenever I hover my mouse inside this window, the image is going to be fade in, and image is going to be fade out whenever I make my mouse leave the window. Okay, so to do this I need to event to generate. So I'll use something called as mouse leave and mouse enter event, so that I can have this animation. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'll go for the event section, and I'll search something called as no, I'll click on this image, and then I'll go for event, and then I will search mouse leave or mouse enter event. So I'll go for enter event, and I'll double click on that. Okay, I'll just remove this section, and also to have this animation I need a namespace, and the namespace is using system dot window dot media dot animation. Okay, so this is the namespace by which you can enable the animation inside any control. Okay, so right now I have mouse enter, and I'm going to do what? I'm going to fade in here. because my mouse is going to be enter inside that window, so that that image is going to be fade in. So the code for that is I'm having image class, and I'll use the variable img, and then I'll use again image, and then it is going to be in the center. And then I'll use something called as double animation to have the animation animation class, and then I'll use DANM as the variable of double animation, and then I'll say new double animation. And you can see it is having phi overload method, double animation having phi overload method, and I'm going to use this first overload method, which says double to value. So the first argument that I'm going to pass is over here is 1 to fade in. Okay, so to fade in I having 1, and then I need the duration, at what second or what minute, at what hour I need this animation to be enabled. So I'm going to say time span dot for from second. Okay, so time seconds. And how many seconds to be enabled for that? I'll say 2 seconds, or let's say it is having for 3 seconds. Okay, so for 3 seconds the fade in, 3 second, for 3 seconds this fade in thing is going to be happen with this one inside this image. Okay, I hope you are getting it. Now next thing is I'm use image dot begin animation, and begin animation needs dependency property DP. So where exactly you want this is, I'll say image dot opacity property. Okay, so this is my dependency property. What kind of animation you want on this image? I want opacity property. I'm going to make it opaque. Okay, I'm going to fade in, fade out. For that I need opacity property. So, and I'm going to pass animation timeline animation. So I mean it is asking me the time duration, and you already had a variable for that. We have DANM, so I'm just going to pass it. Okay, so this is it. And now when you're gonna run this, basically it will run, but I need another event also, that is mouse leave event. So what I'm gonna do, I'll go for XML again, I'll click on this image button and I'll search mouse leave event. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to copy this complete thing and I'm going to paste it over here, and just a minute change, I will say fade out here. So for fade out I need this 0. Okay, this is it. So when I run this application, you will see that the image is going to be fade in and fade out whenever I hover on that window. So now you see when I entering my mouse is not working, it will work. So you can see the image is fading now. Okay, now when I enter into the window, again the image is going to be come back after 3 seconds. Okay, so you can see this is the animation property, or you can say the animation application of WPF. I hope you are getting it. This is the code for it, you can have it. Okay, so the next thing that we gonna do inside this WPF tutorial is the data binding. Okay, we always do this data binding for every application. We had seen in console application, we had seen in window form application, we had seen in web form application, and now we are seeing this data binding in WPF application. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is I'm going into the XAML part again, and I'm going to delete this image. I'm completely deleting over here, and I'm also removing this background. I don't need this, having the completely blank grid over here. I'm going to xml.cs again. I'm going to delete these events, I don't need it. Okay, I'm going to remove it, and the first, this is the fresh page now. Okay, I'm not taking any new project here. This is okay to me. The first step is you create one database.mdf file, and it is easy to get one. Right click on that, add new item, and inside data you're having this service based database, that is nothing but database 1.mdf. you are creating one database here. Okay, so I have this database 1.mdf. I'm going to open my server explorer, which can be enabled in view. You can see we have server explorer. The shortcut is Control Alt S, and you can have this server explorer. You expand this database 1.mdf, and here we have tables. There is no table right now. currently we don't have any. So I'm going to create new table, and I hope you know these steps because you already had done console, web, and window. So I'm so sorry, I had clicked compare table. So um, I just have to close this, close it, and table, add new table. I'm going to do it quickly. So the first column is going to be ID, and I say integer. The second thing is I need fname for first name. I'll say varchar. Then lname for again varchar, and I'll say city, again varchar. Okay, so this is the thing that we had done. I'll set ID as primary key, and then in the ID I need this identity specification to get an auto increment in my ID. So is identity is going to be yes, and I'm going to save this table as tbl underscore data. And the next thing is I'll insert some dummy data inside my table. You can have this table here and the column of these table. And what I'm going to do is I'll insert some dummy data here, show table data, and the first name is going to be, let's say this is test, and the last name is going to be test1. And let me just have some good names. Smith, and it's going to be what? Smith, and he's from I don't know, America. We have Rahul, we have a surname as Kumar, and he's from Mumbai. We also have Nitesh and Sharma. He's from maybe from Lucknow. Okay, so this is the dummy data that I had inserted, and now I want that this data is being displayed inside the data grid view. Okay, this is my intention now. So now what you can do, you need data grid view, right? So you go for toolbox, search for data grid. This is the data grid inside all WPF control, and you drag and drop over here. Okay, so this is your data grid. It is completely blank. Now you know that in web form and window form there is a button, and from that button you do something called as add new column. However, inside WPF we don't have anything, right? You also can right click and we have, you know, this data grid, but it has been completely disabled for us. So how to create those, you know, column? Well, you can create those column manually by writing the code inside this grid layout. So I'm writing the code. You can write with me also. So the first thing you need to write over here is I need columns, right? So what I'm gonna do, I'll write data grid dot columns. Okay, because I need columns, so I need data grid dot column. Next thing is I need column headers, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'll say data grid text. I think I had done something wrong here, and what it says, I think it has been, yeah, okay. So this is it, and I need this everything data grid data text column to be inside that data grid. Okay, so please remember that if you are using this end tag, it is not going to work over here. So you need this complete data grid complete tag. So what I'm gonna do, I will use again data grid dot column, and you can have now. Okay, inside this data grid column I need data grid text column, so I'm using text column here. I also need something called as header, and header is going to be so sorry, what is this? Yeah, header is going to be ID, and I'll say I need also the width is going to be 40, let's say, and then I need something called as binding property. Now this is important, you haven't done it, right? This is hardcore binding. In earlier applications like web and window, you never do this hardcore binding. You already have an option inside the property window, the binding option, right? However, here in the WPF you are doing hardcore binding, so binding needs curly braces, and you will say binding ID, and this ID is going to be the same as the table column name. Okay, this is binding ID, and you're going to be close it. So this is your first column, data text grid, data grid text column, and you can see here we already had enabled our ID column. Okay, the same way you will do the same thing for F name, same thing for L name, and same thing for column. So again, what I'm gonna do, I'll change the ID to first name, and this ID to be last name, and the last ID is for city. Okay, and I'll change the width property too, so this is going to be like 100, this also needs to be 100, and let me have the last column to be as 100. Again, I also need to change the binding here, so this is now binding as F name, binding as L name, and binding as city. Hope you are getting it. Okay, so I think this is done, and you can easily see over here inside the okay, you can see here in the data grid view you have ID, first name, last name, and city. It can be visualized over here, right? Just like in the web form and window form, you are having the data grid view. You can see the columns ID, first name, last name, and city, just like in the table ID, F name, L name, and city, and you had binded these column with this data table column name. Okay, so now I need backend code, so I go to window main window.xml.cs, and what I'm gonna do over here is I'll create one method here, and the method name is refresh data, and I'm going to enable it by pressing Alt or Enter, and it will generate one method for me. I'm going to remove this throw new implement exception, and I'll write the code for ADO.NET to bind that data grid view with my data table. So the first thing in ADO.NET you had seen is the SQL connection, right? So to use this SQL connection, I need namespace. So I'll use the namespace as using system.data.sql client, and also using system.data. Okay, I mean it is not necessary, but I'm just writing it in case. So SQL connection con equals to new SQL connection, and I already know, I hope that you know how to get this connection string by going to your server explorer, database1.mdf. In the property window you are having, oh I'm so sorry, property window. So the next step is going to be I'm opening my connection con.open, and then I'll use SQL command to give the command query, the SQL query, SQL command cmd equals to new SQL command, and I'll simply say select star from my table, that is tbl underscore data, and I'm going to pass my connection object. Okay, and then I'll use SQL data adapter SDA equals to new SQL data adapter. I'm going to pass cmd here, and I'll use database actually you need to use something called as data set here, that is ds equals to new data set, and then what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to use sda.fill and ts, and then I'll use if condition, and my data set tables row is equals to 0 dot I'm so sorry rows dot count. If the count is greater than 0, then what I want, I need to bind my data grid. So data grid 1 dot item source, and your item source will come, or the data source is going to be come from ds dot tables from 0 dot default view. This is it. And then in the last, I'm going to close this connection and I run this application. I hope this will run. So you can see that my data grid is completely been, you know, it has been filled from the data table that we had in the database. You can see show table data, and whatever the data we having in the table, it has been loaded inside the data grid view. And this data grid view is, you can see, this is, I mean, this is more rich user interface it is having than that of a data grid view or the grid view in the web component or in the window component. You see, it gives you the sorting or the filtering according to the ascending and the descending order of ID, just like first name last name, just like last name. We have city is also according to the ascending and the descending alphabets, and ID is also going to be ascending and the descending order of your this numeric characters, right? And we also have the scroll bar here. This is not scroll bar actually, but we also have this with this scroll, and we can, if we have larger number of columns, then we can scroll it. So it is having larger component than that of, you know, the grid view and the data grid view. So this is your data binding with data grid in WPF C#. I hope you are getting it. We had seen two applications for WPF, and I think it has been is going to be easy to formulate that in the Visual Studio. Just watch the video and do the step-by-step practical. Okay, I had also given the notes here. You can get this note and write write about WPF or if it is being asked in the exam. Okay, thank you so much for listening me. If you have any doubt, you can ask me in the comment section, and I will try my best to resolve it. Okay, thank you so much.